Louisville, Kentucky, October 2019. Sarah Mitchell had been working as a security guard for only 3 months when she took the overnight shift at the old Waverly Hills Sanatorium on October 23, 2019. The former tuberculosis hospital, which operated from 1910 to 1961, had been abandoned for decades before being converted into a historical landmark and occasional tour destination. Sarah needed the extra money, and the facility's dark reputation didn't particularly bother her. She'd never believed in ghosts. The building stood imposingly on its hill, its white facade barely visible in the autumn fog that rolled across the Kentucky landscape that night. Sarah arrived at 10 p.m., relieving the evening guard who seemed unusually eager to leave. "Just stick to your rounds," he told her. "Don't go to the 4th floor unless you absolutely have to." Sarah laughed it off. By midnight, she'd completed 2 uneventful rounds through the massive building, her flashlight cutting through the darkness of rooms that once held the dying and desperate. The tuberculosis epidemic had claimed over 60,000 lives at Waverly Hills, and the building's body chute, a tunnel used to discreetly remove the dead, still existed beneath the structure. At 2:17 a.m., according to the timestamp on her incident report, Sarah heard it, a child's voice singing from somewhere above her. She was on the 2nd floor at the time, standing in what used to be the children's ward. The voice was faint but unmistakable, a melody she didn't recognize. Protocol required her to investigate any sounds, so she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. The singing stopped. The 3rd floor hallway stretched before her, patient rooms branching off on either side. The air felt different here, heavier and several degrees colder despite the building's consistent temperature. Sarah's breath began to fog. She called out, thinking perhaps a homeless person had found their way inside, but received no answer. Then she heard footsteps above her, the 4th floor. Against the previous guard's warning, Sarah climbed the final staircase. The 4th floor had housed the most severe cases, patients in the final stages of tuberculosis, many of whom died within days of arrival. She pushed open the stairwell door and stepped into the hallway. Every door along the corridor stood open, except one, room 502. Sarah knew the story of room 502. Everyone who worked there did. In 1928, a nurse named Mary Hillenberg had hung herself in that room after discovering she was pregnant and infected with tuberculosis. The room had a reputation, but Sarah remained skeptical. She approached the closed door and tested the handle. Locked. That's when she heard the voice directly behind her, a woman whispering, "Help me." Sarah spun around to find the hallway empty. Her flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she heard it again, closer this time, the voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Help me. Help me. Help me." The temperature plummeted. Sarah could see her breath in great white clouds. The door to room 502 began to rattle violently in its frame. Sarah ran. She didn't stop running until she reached her car in the parking lot. She called her supervisor from the vehicle, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. When maintenance arrived to investigate, they found all the doors on the 4th floor closed and locked, including the stairwell door, which should have been impossible as it could only be locked from the inside. The security footage from that night showed Sarah entering the 4th floor at 2:31 a.m. It showed her standing in the hallway facing the closed door of room 502. What it also showed, for exactly 17 seconds, was the transparent figure of a woman in a nurse's uniform standing behind Sarah, her mouth moving as if speaking. The figure vanished the moment Sarah turned around. Sarah Mitchell never returned to Waverly Hills. The footage was reviewed by the facility's management and subsequently locked away. Sarah provided her testimony to local paranormal investigators in November 2019, but refused to ever enter the building again. She moved to Ohio 3 months later. The facility continues to operate as a historical site, offering ghost tours to curious visitors. Room 502 remains one of the most requested stops, though guides are instructed never to open the door. Several tour guides have reported their keys mysteriously going missing when groups approach the 4th floor, only to reappear in their pockets after the tour concludes. The room itself hasn't been entered since 2019, when the locks were changed following Sarah's incident. A maintenance worker who requested anonymity reported in early 2020 that he occasionally hears singing on the 4th floor during routine checks, always the same unfamiliar melody, always in a child's voice. He's learned to conduct his inspections during daylight hours only. Interstate 80, Wyoming, February 2021. Truck driver Marcus Webb had been hauling freight across Interstate 80 for 15 years without incident. A practical man from Cheyenne, Wyoming, Marcus prided himself on his reliability and his no-nonsense approach to the job. On February 14, 2021, he picked up a load in Sacramento, California, destined for Omaha, Nebraska. The route would take him through the desolate winter landscape of Wyoming, a drive he'd made hundreds of times. The snowstorm hit around 9 p.m. as Marcus crossed the Wyoming border. Weather reports had predicted light snow, but this was developing into a full blizzard. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. At 9:47 p.m. near the town of Rock Springs, Marcus saw a figure standing on the shoulder of the highway, thumb out, requesting a ride. Standard protocol and common sense told Marcus never to pick up hitchhikers, but the conditions were lethal. No one could survive long in that storm. The figure appeared to be a young woman in jeans and a light jacket, completely inadequate for the sub-zero temperatures. Marcus slowed his rig and pulled over. The woman climbed into the cab without a word. She appeared to be in her early 20s with dark hair plastered to her face from the snow. She was shivering violently. Marcus turned up the heat and offered her his emergency blanket. She took it, wrapping it around herself, but never spoke. Marcus asked where she needed to go, and she simply pointed forward down the highway. "All right," Marcus said. "I'll take you to the next town. We'll get you warmed up and call someone." They drove in silence for 20 minutes. Marcus tried making conversation several times, asking her name, where she was from, but received no response. She simply stared ahead through the windshield at the swirling snow. Marcus noticed she wasn't shivering anymore, which concerned him. Hypothermia victims often stop shivering in the late stages. At 10:15 p.m., according to Marcus's dashcam timestamp, the woman turned to look at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were completely black, no whites visible at all. She opened her mouth and spoke in a voice that didn't match her appearance, deeper and resonant. "You shouldn't have stopped." Marcus jerked the wheel in shock. The truck skidded on the icy road, but he managed to maintain control. When he looked at the passenger seat again, it was empty. The blanket lay in a heap, but the woman was gone. The cab was still sealed. The door hadn't opened, but she had vanished. Marcus pulled over, his heart hammering. He checked the entire cab, the sleeper berth, everywhere. No one. He examined the blanket and found it was bone dry, despite the woman having been covered in snow. The seat where she'd sat showed no moisture, no sign anyone had been there at all. Badly shaken, Marcus contacted the Wyoming Highway Patrol, reporting the incident at 10:22 p.m. Trooper Jennifer Hoskins responded to his call. What she told him made his blood run cold. There had been an accident at that exact location in February 2018, almost 3 years to the day. A young woman named Rachel Morrison, age 23, had been struck and killed while hitchhiking during a snowstorm. Her body had been found on the shoulder of I-80 near mile marker 122, wearing jeans and a light jacket. The driver who hit her had never been found. Marcus checked his GPS coordinates. He'd picked up the hitchhiker at mile marker 122. The dashcam footage showed Marcus pulling over at 9:47 p.m. It showed him reaching across to open the passenger door. It showed him appearing to hand something to the passenger seat and then talking, periodically glancing to his right as if conversing with someone, but the passenger seat remained empty throughout the entire recording. At 10:15 p.m., the footage clearly captured Marcus jerking the wheel, his face frozen in shock, his eyes fixed on the empty passenger seat. Marcus completed his delivery to Omaha, but took 3 weeks off afterwards. He provided his testimony to multiple paranormal researchers and submitted the dashcam footage to local news stations. The story gained traction on social media, with several other truck drivers coming forward with similar experiences on the same stretch of I-80. One driver, Daniel Torres, reported picking up an identical hitchhiker in January 2020, only to have her disappear from his locked cab. Another, Patricia Gomez, claimed to have seen the same young woman standing on the shoulder in December 2021, but didn't stop. In her rearview mirror, she watched the figure turn to watch her drive away, and she swears the figure simply faded into the snow. The Wyoming Highway Patrol issued a statement in March 2021 acknowledging the reports, but providing no explanation. A memorial marker for Rachel Morrison now stands near mile marker 122, placed by her family in February 2022. Truck drivers regularly report seeing a figure near the marker during snowstorms, always hitchhiking, always wearing inadequate clothing for the weather. Marcus Webb still drives I-80, but now he takes an alternate route through Colorado when possible, especially during winter months. He refuses to stop for hitchhikers under any circumstances. The dashcam footage remains archived with the Wyoming Highway Patrol and has been viewed by paranormal investigators from across the country. No satisfactory explanation has ever been provided for the empty seat that Marcus Webb insists wasn't empty at all.
Seoul, South Korea, August 2022. Kim Ji-won was a 26-year-old graduate student at Yonsei University in Seoul, South Korea, studying folklore and urban legends for her master's thesis. In August 2022, she became fascinated by the elevator game, a ritual that supposedly originated in Korea and Japan, claiming to transport players to another dimension if performed correctly. Ji-won was a skeptic, viewing such stories as modern folklore worth documenting, but not believing in their supernatural elements. On August 19, 2022, at 11:30 p.m., Ji-won entered the elevator of her apartment building at 42 Serdamungu, a 15-story residential complex built in 1997. She planned to perform the elevator game ritual while recording the experience on her phone for her research. The ritual required specific steps, pressing buttons in a particular sequence, ascending and descending to different floors in a precise order, all while alone in the elevator. According to the legend, if performed correctly, on the final ascension to the 10th floor, a woman would enter the elevator. The player must not look at or acknowledge this woman. If the ritual succeeded, pressing the button for the first floor would instead cause the elevator to ascend to a 10th floor that didn't exist in normal reality, a place where the player would be completely alone. Ji-won began the sequence at 11:33 p.m. She pressed the button for the 4th floor, then the 2nd, then the 6th, then the 2nd again, then the 10th. Her phone camera recorded everything. The elevator moved as instructed, and Ji-won remained alone. At the 10th floor, following the ritual's instructions, she pressed the button for the 5th floor. The elevator descended. On the 5th floor, according to the legend, a woman would enter. The doors opened at 11:37 p.m. A woman stood in the hallway. She appeared young, perhaps in her 30s, wearing a white dress that seemed outdated, possibly from the 1990s. Her hair hung long and straight, obscuring much of her face. Ji-won's research notes indicated she should not look at this woman, should not speak to her, should not acknowledge her presence in any way. The woman entered the elevator. Ji-won kept her eyes fixed on her phone screen, watching the recording, watching the button panel, looking anywhere except at the woman now standing beside her. She could hear breathing, slow and steady. The elevator remained stationary, doors open. Following the ritual's final instruction, Ji-won pressed the button for the 1st floor. The elevator doors closed, but instead of descending, the elevator began to rise. 10th floor, 11th floor. The building only had 15 floors, but the numbers kept climbing. 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. The elevator didn't stop. The breathing beside Ji-won grew louder. She made the mistake of glancing to her right. The woman's head was turned toward her, hair still covering her face, but Ji-won could see what looked like a smile beneath the dark strands. The elevator's lights flickered and turned red. The number display showed 22 and continued climbing. Ji-won began pressing buttons frantically, hitting the emergency call button, but nothing responded. The elevator kept rising. Through the crack in the doors, Ji-won could see darkness passing by, not the normal elevator shaft, but an absolute void. The temperature in the elevator dropped dramatically. The woman in white took a step closer. At that moment, according to Ji-won's testimony, she screamed and hammered on the elevator doors. The woman reached out with one pale hand. The lights went completely black. When the elevator doors opened again, Ji-won stumbled out into her apartment building's lobby, where the security guard, Lee Sang-min, found her at 11:52 p.m. She was disoriented, hypothermic despite the summer heat, and her phone's battery was completely drained despite being at 87% when she entered the elevator. Lee called emergency services immediately. The phone wouldn't power on for 3 days. When it finally did, the video file was corrupted for the most part, showing only digital static and glitches. However, several frames could be recovered. One clear frame, timestamped at 11:37:22 p.m., showed the elevator interior with Ji-won standing to one side. Beside her, partially obscured by visual distortion, was the figure of a woman in white. Subsequent frames showed the number display climbing past 15, reaching numbers that shouldn't exist. The final recoverable frame, timestamped at 11:51:47 p.m., showed only darkness and what appeared to be a pale hand reaching toward the camera. Ji-won spent 2 days in the hospital being treated for hypothermia and shock. The elevator maintenance records showed no malfunction on August 19th. The elevator's internal log indicated that car number 2 was stationary on the ground floor from 11:15 to 11:53 p.m., contradicting both Ji-won's experience and security guard Lee's testimony that the elevator had been in use. The most disturbing discovery came from the building's management. They researched the property's history after Ji-won's incident and found that in 1999, a woman named Park Mi-sun, aged 34, had died in that same elevator. She had been trapped between floors during a malfunction and died of cardiac arrest before rescue crews could reach her. Park Mi-sun had been wearing a white dress when her body was recovered. Ji-won abandoned her thesis research and refused to enter any elevator alone for months afterwards. She provided detailed testimony to the Korean Society of Paranormal Research in September 2022. The building management quietly removed the elevator from service for 2 weeks, conducting extensive maintenance and even bringing in a shaman to perform a cleansing ritual, though this was never officially acknowledged. Other residents of the building have reported usual experiences with elevator number 2 since the building opened. Several people claim to have seen a woman in white on the 5th floor, always near the elevator, though these reports were dismissed as urban legend until Ji-won's incident. In October 2022, a resident named Choi Yong-hee reported that elevator number 2 had taken her to the 17th floor, despite the building only having 15 floors. The doors had opened to reveal a long hallway illuminated by light, with all apartment doors standing open. Choi frantically pressed the button for the ground floor, and the elevator descended normally, but she moved to a different building the following month. The recovered video frames from Ji-won's phone have been analyzed by digital forensics experts who cannot explain the anomalies in the footage or how the elevator's internal display could show floor numbers beyond the building's actual structure. The thermal imaging of Ji-won taken at the hospital showed her core temperature had dropped to a dangerous 34.5 degrees Celsius or 94.1 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the outside temperature being 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit and the elevator being climate controlled. Ji-won now lives in Busan and works as a high school teacher. She completed her degree with a different thesis topic and refuses to discuss the elevator game publicly. The building at 42 Surdamunguis still stands, and elevator number 2 remains in service, though many residents specifically avoid it, especially late at night. Security guard Lee Sam-min has reported finding the elevator stopped at the 5th floor multiple times, with the doors open and no passengers inside, always between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and midnight. The elevator game continues to circulate on Korean internet forums, with Ji-won's case cited as a cautionary tale. Several paranormal investigation teams have requested permission to investigate the building, but management has denied all requests. The game's instructions can still be found online, along with dozens of warnings not to attempt it. Some games, it seems, are not meant to be played.